Hello everyone, my name is Jared Links and I'm the owner here at Simple Bites of Life. This is an exciting time of year for us as beekeepers. Why? Spring is here, right? Flowers are blooming, nectar is coming into the beehives, pollen is coming in, the bees are working hard, winter is over. And it is an exciting time of year, but it's also an exciting time of year specifically because a lot of you are getting ready to become first-time beekeepers. You're getting ready to get that first nucleus colony that you have ordered, and I am sure you are so excited about it. You're so excited about it. Likely you're probably going to pick it up sometime around April to May, maybe late March, that's a possibility, but probably April to May is what you're looking at. And one of the key points to being successful as a first-time beekeeper is understanding the bee season. So you're getting this colony. How do you understand the year as a whole as a beekeeper? What do you need to be doing as soon as you get that colony to help it grow? What do you need to be doing in the fall to prepare for winter? Well, I'm going to go over that here in this video, and we're going to start all the way from day number 1. You go to your drop-off point to get your colony. It's a 5-frame nuke likely. Now there can be obviously nucleus colonies of different sizes, but I'm going to assume, because it's pretty standard, that you're getting a 5-frame nucleus colony. What is going to happen is standard again is that you're going to have 3 frames of brood, you're going to have 1 frame of food, and you're going to have 1 frame that is fairly blank for expansion purposes. All 5 frames are going to have pretty thick bees on them, right? There's going to be a lot of bees in this package, okay? So you're going to go get that 5-frame colony from your drop-off point, and then you're going to be putting it in one of these colonies that look something like this, one of the deep hive bodies that you're going to have hopefully set up before you go to your drop-off point. You want to have it all set up and ready to go the day before, so that whenever you go to the drop-off point, you come home with your bees and you're all ready to go. Have a deep box all ready and assembled with 5 frames in it. You have your bottom board, you have your inner cover, you have your top cover. Hopefully you have it on some kind of a stand like concrete blocks, a wood stand, whatever it is that you prefer to use. You're going to take this 5-frame nucleus colony, you're going to put the 5 frames right in the middle, okay? Right in the middle. So you want your 5 frames that you pull straight out of that nuke, and you're going to put them straight down into this deep colony. You're going to have the 5 frames from the nuke, and then beside those you're going to have the frames that you already had in there for expansion, 5 of those total as well. What can you do to help that colony take off? Well, I want you to picture this with me for a second. As I said, there's going to be 3 frames of brood, 3 frames of young, developing bees that are waiting to hatch. What does that mean? That means that if you get roughly 7,000 bees per deep frame, you're going to have 21,000 bees that are going to be emerging in less than 3 weeks. That's a lot of bees. That's a significant amount of bees. But let's say that's just a little bit high, because a lot of times on these brood frames you'll have a little bit of honey, a little bit of nectar, a little bit of pollen, all that good stuff that we love. And so let's say you get 15 to 20,000. Well, if you're going to help this colony to begin to expand quickly so that you give yourself the best chance of producing honey this season, and also the best chance of them staying healthy and overwintering successfully, what I'm going to recommend that you do is go ahead and put pollen. Go ahead, put a pollen patty on that colony, have a couple of them stored back and ready to go, and also have some sugar water. So have a sugar water feeder, whether that be one that goes on top, one that is a frame that goes in the colony, one that goes in front of the colony as an entrance feeder, whatever your flavor of choice is. Have that sugar water ready to go and hammer it. Hammer it. Feed them as much as they will take. That is going to help them increase through and build up, because you're going to want them to have that deep box all built up, and then if you're going to go with either a second deep box or a medium box as their second brood chamber box, you're going to want to have them expand through that, and then you're going to want to harvest the honey on box number 3 and above. And so you need them to push through those first 2 boxes of expansion rapidly, and your best chance of doing that, feed them pollen, feed them sugar water. Pollen patties, sugar water. Pollen patties are essentially their steak, it's their protein. Sugar water is equivalent to our potatoes, right? So steak, pollen, potatoes is sugar water for beekeepers and for bees in terms of this understanding. So you're going to go ahead and help them to expand as quickly as they possibly can, and you're going to keep up that process. Now, a little tip here, be sure and go back into the colony. If you do put a pollen patty in there, go back into it a week later and then go ahead and just replace that pollen patty and put a new one in there somewhere around 7 to 10 days, because you don't want hive beetles to come in and to lay eggs and to develop in that pollen patty. So you're going to be doing that. You're going to be pumping in food during that early part of the season, and you're going to be trying to help them to expand. Now, do I have to pump in sugar water right now on these established colonies back here? No, I don't. Why? They're established. They're established and they're getting plenty of nectar. They have plenty of workers to go out and to get nectar, and so I don't have to worry about that right now. They're getting plenty of everything that they need. This is a young colony. This is a new colony, right? They don't have that population of bees. We want to make it as easy on them as we possibly can in those first 2 boxes, helping them get through that. And then once you get through those first 2 boxes and you're ready for that 3rd box, stop using the sugar water, so that you're not going to have sugar water honey, but you're going to have that pure honey that we all love so much. And so you're going to be pushing the feed. You're going to be inspecting every couple of weeks to make sure they're maintaining good health, to make sure that the queen is laying properly. That's what that early season time is going to be like. Whenever you see that about, depending on the estimate you want to go with, about 7 to 8 frames, 7 to 8 frames of that deep box are covered with bees, and they've begun to expand very heavily in those 7 to 8 frames, and you see that, okay, these 7 frames here, they're being used, they're covered with bees, go ahead and add that 2nd box. Go ahead and add that 2nd box at that point. So you're going to keep going through your bee season, right? You're going to expand through box number 1, you're going to expand through box number 2. Lord willing, you're going to be able to go to box number 3 and have honey to harvest this year. Sometimes that happens, sometimes that doesn't. Just kind of depends on some variables and how everything goes with your nectar flow, and also how the bees develop over time. But it's not unusual to get a box of honey on that first nuke that first year. So you're going to be going on and you're going to be expanding, but summer is around the corner. What are the challenges of beekeeping in the summer? Well, it is very, very hot. It is very, very hot. This is one of the reasons why I personally like using a screened bottom board. I beekeep here in Arkansas. We have heat indexes of 110, 115. I've even seen upwards of close to 120 heat indexes here before. It is very hot and it is very humid. Whenever it is hot and humid, here's what happens. The bees, they go out on the front of the colony and they begin to beard, which is where essentially they are trying to cool down that colony to keep it from overheating. And so that's why I like the screen bottom board, because I can open it up all the way to allow more ventilation into my colony, which helps them to stay cool. That's my personal opinion, that's my personal preference. Other beekeepers use a solid bottom board and they have great overwinter rates, they have great success rates, so you can really choose what you want to do there. But I'm saying for me personally, I do like the screen bottom board for the summer months whenever it is so incredibly hot. But at some point during the summer, you're going to hit the summer dearth. And what happens whenever you hit the summer dearth is that there is no nectar for your bees to go out and find, or very little nectar for your bees to go out and find. And so you're going to need to begin pushing the sugar water again, feeding the sugar water again, to try to help them through that dearth period. It can really vary on when that dearth period starts. Sometimes it can be in July, a lot of times it's in August. You can look into it going into a little bit into early September, but your fall flow will be kicking in somewhere around that September, October range pretty substantially. So if you live near soybean crops, you will actually be getting a benefit of the soybean crop during those summer months of dearth. So that's an extra plus if that happens to be you. But I'm assuming it's not you. So you're going to be needing to feed sugar water. You're going to be needing to feed sugar water to help them stay healthy. You're going to want to be evaluating your queen. You want to be evaluating your queen and seeing a good, healthy cover to cover on the frame, right, end to end brood pattern, where she's really filling that brood pattern up. If that's not the case, get a new queen. Get a new queen. Get a new queen in July if possible. You can wait till August, but really personally I found it better that my colonies are more successful whenever I requeen July or before, if I can. So that's a little tip there. Do not overwinter or try to overwinter on a queen that is struggling. I've done that before in my past as a beekeeper. I can tell you it will not work out well for you. It will not work out well for you. Nobody likes to replace a queen, but it is a reality of beekeeping that if you see a queen failing, you need to go ahead and you need to replace them. So summer months, you're going to be feeding and you're going to be replacing that queen. Now we're entering fall. Okay, let's say late summer to fall, August, September, October. What are you going to be doing then? Well, now it's time to really focus on varroa mites. It's time to focus on varroa mites, which you might actually do a little bit in the summer too, because if you have an oxalic acid vaporizer, whenever you take that third super off and you harvest it, you can go ahead and you can hit them with oxalic acid once or twice, just to try to at least keep that mite count a little bit down. It's probably not going to do a whole lot of a dent. For me last year it really didn't, but maybe it'll at least keep them from totally spiking up. But your main mite control is going to come in the fall and it's going to come in the winter. What are you going to want to use? Well, there's a lot of options, but personally this last year I had a ton of success with Apigard. Ton of success with Apigard. That is one that I can wholeheartedly recommend. The mite counts were really, really good. Okay, I'm talking like my mite counts were about 1% after using Apigard. They were fantastic. It was a good product, so that's one that I would recommend that you look into. Of course, there are others that you can look into as well. I would recommend that you contact your bee supplier about that in your local area, maybe even your state bee inspector, and see what they recommend for bees in your area and given temperatures and all that. And so you're going to be looking at getting those bees cleaned up for varroa mites, inserting those treatments so that whenever you're going into winter, you're going to be good to go. And you really want to get that done in about that late August to early September time frame. And the reason being is that your bees are going to start raising winter bees, and you want those winter bees to be as healthy as absolutely possible. And really you want the bees raising the winter bees to be as healthy as possible. Okay, so if I have a bee in, let's say, that's been raised and it's helping to raise this next generation that is going to be a winter bee, a bee that will overwinter for a few months. Well, if my bee that is raising that bee, the overwinter bee, is unhealthy, then it could pass a virus. It could pass on something else to that winter bee. So even though that winter bee didn't have a varroa problem or anything like that, if my summer bee is still having impacts from varroa issues, then those can get passed on. So you want to try to get this done, this varroa mite treatment done as early as possible. And like I said, you're going to have this fall flow kick in most years. Sometimes it's really minimal on a fall flow. Some years it's fantastic on the fall flow. It really does vary depending on weather conditions, and it varies from year to year. But you're going to want to watch, especially around that late August to early September, because there are a couple things that could happen. Your bees could not touch your sugar water and your pollen very much because they're getting it naturally. They're getting it from all kinds of different plants. Or if you're drier and you've not gotten much rain, they could be hammering that sugar water. They could be hammering that pollen, and it's vital. It is vital that you are giving them both of those. That you're giving them both of those so that then they are being encouraged, the queens are being encouraged to continue laying aggressively, because what happens is if there's no nectar, if there's nothing coming in, that queen is going to quit laying nearly as much. So you want to keep that sugar water coming, you want to keep that pollen coming, you want to pick up on the back of that hive, and you want it to be rock solid. You don't want it to be really easily wobbledy. If it is very easily wobbledy, go ahead and feed a little bit heavier sugar ratio, like about a 2-to-1. If your weight's pretty good, but you're just wanting to keep a good population, you can feed 1-to-1 sugar water ratio, and you'll be doing great with that. So that's really what you're looking at for the fall, is you're wanting to prepare for 6 months, 3 to 6 months down the road is what you're wanting to do. So you're going to do that by keeping the queens, making sure you just requeened in late summer, so you're all good there. Keep making sure that she's not having any issues. Make sure they have the nutrition that they need, and make sure that you are getting rid of those varroa mites. Definitely. Now winter is here. What do you do in the winter? Well, you don't do a whole lot. You don't do a whole lot of beekeeping in the winter because you don't inspect a whole lot, really, unless it's, you can get into the bees whenever it's above 50, but personally I love to see it above 60. I feel like if it's below 60, I'm kind of fudging a little bit, but you can do it. It's just that it's not necessarily my personal ideal scenario, right? If it's going to be below 60, let's at least hope that it's a sunny day, and I'm going to have really a reason to go out in there. But you can do it, but you want to have around 60. If it's around 60, you may go in and just pop a couple of lids, make sure that the population size looks good, and lift the back of the beehives, make sure that they're still feeling healthy. But you're not really going to be doing detailed inspections around late November, December, January, February. Maybe you are in February if it's a warm late February, but it's not going to happen a whole lot. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be feeding, actually. So this is a little bit of something that I've personally found to be incredibly helpful to my winter success. When do bees actually fly? What temperature will they fly at over the winter? Well, usually 50 degrees is a pretty good number. If it's above 50 degrees, they're going to be flying. If it's winter, there's not necessarily a whole lot for them to go get naturally. So this is where community feeding really comes into play. You can take a 5-gallon bucket and you can drill holes around it so that 1/8 inch holes. You don't want to get bigger than that or else the bees can crawl in, and you can feed them sugar water. You can open feed them dry pollen. Critical, okay? If you feed your bees dry pollen, if you've taken care of all these issues, royal mites, you have a good queen, you have good nutrition, if you feed your bees during the winter, they are going to come out booming late February to March. It's going to be a matter of when do you want to split them and how long do you want to try to keep them from swarming. But that presence of sugar water coming in, pollen coming in, is going to cause that queen to lay just a little bit more. And it's going to cause that queen, especially as you're beginning to hit late January into February. I'm talking about time here in Arkansas, okay? So if you're in a different location, if you're in a colder location, this could be a little bit different. If you're in a warmer location, this could be a little bit different. But for me, about that late January to early February, that queen is really going to start kicking in. She's really going to start laying. And what that's going to mean is that late February to early March, your bees are going to be booming, okay? I had bee colonies, multiple of them, with 20 frames of bees by the end of February. By the end of February this year. It was a little bit of an early spring, but also this feeding process that I'm telling you about, it really does work, and it really does help. What else are you going to want to do during the winter? Well, personally, I like to also put a little bit of feed inside of my colonies. So I will put a mixture of dried pollen and dry sugar into the colonies during the winter. This serves a couple of different purposes. Number one, it helps to, of course, give the bees a little bit of pollen, a little bit of protein, a little bit of extra food, so that's great. But number two, it actually helps to absorb the moisture out of the hive. This is absolutely critical. I am using a round top hive feeder, and I put my dry pollen and my dry sugar mixture in there, about 5 cups of sugar to 1 cup of pollen is roughly what I am personally doing. And so you put that in there and it absorbs the moisture in the colony. So what happens is that colony, that brood chamber is, it's over 90 degrees in there. And let's say it's 30 degrees outside. Well, that's going to cause condensation. That's going to cause moisture. That dry sugar, that dry pollen mixture is going to serve to absorb a significant amount of that moisture. I also close my screen bottom boards with a plastic insert. Personally, I've overwintered them without closing it, so you do what you prefer on that particular issue. But I do like to go ahead and personally put that dry sugar, dry pollen in there. Now, there's another thing that I like to do during the winter, and it is to actually begin to hit varroa mite treatments again with oxalic acid. Oxalic acid, I have found, is incredibly successful in the winter. So you're going to want to do either a couple of things. A lot of people will start around the winter solstice, sometime in December, and will treat for, say, 4 weeks in a row. You want to space your treatments about every 6 to 7 days for 4 weeks. So you're doing a treatment day 1, 6-7 days later, you're going to do another treatment, and you're going to repeat that 4 times total, for a total of 4 treatments. And that is going to help the colonies tremendously in terms of mite counts, okay? I tested several of my colonies this year. My highest mite count was 1% coming out of winter. Most were below 1%. And so this oxalic acid, it is really, really good stuff for helping your beehives out during the winter. So this nucleus colony that you've got this spring, you're going to treat it about 4 times. Like I said, a lot of people start around the winter solstice. Personally, I like to start later than that. Okay, why? Well, I've actually used my Apigard treatment. I've used my Apigard treatment in the fall. And so my bees, assuming everything went well, are at a really good mite count. You can get an alcohol wash and test it that way. I recommend that you do that. But they should be at a good mite count going into the winter. And so if I treat earlier, then what's going to happen is I'm going to get a little bit more impact on the varroa mite load in the summer. So I am going, this winter treatment, whenever it is, whether you start it in December or you start it in late January like I do, whenever it is, you're going to be going from that treatment, likely, at least for me, this is what I do, I go all the way until the fall without treating, okay? So if I'm going from December to January with my treatments versus January to February, which is what I personally prefer, well, if I wait that extra month, that's going to actually minimize the impact of the mites later on in the year. Why? Well, every single time that the queen lays an egg, every single time that the bee colony has a brood cycle, right, of 3 weeks, what is happening is your mite load is growing every single time. Estimated, it's doubling about every brood cycle. I've seen it not be quite that high, but let's just go with that estimate because that's pretty generally accepted. Doubling roughly every single time, even if it's 1.5ing every single time, every brood cycle. That's a lot. That's a lot. And so if I wait an extra month and my mite count was already good because of my fall treatment, you see what I'm saying? I'm helping myself out quite a bit come that June and July, August, whenever those mite counts are going to spike. And I have found that to be helpful. It's been beneficial for me personally, so that's my strategy on that. Feel free, of course, you know, there's a lot of different ways to keep bees, right? So you can go either way, but personally that's what I've found to be helpful. So you're going to want to be getting that varroa mites down in that late winter period. You're going to want to be feeding, and of course you're on those days where it's, you know, above 50, especially above 60, you're wanting just to crack the lid to make sure there's plenty of population. I don't really like to do much by way of inspecting because the bees have propolis sealed that entire box, and so I want to be as minimal as I can. I'm going to do what I need to do, but I want to be as minimal as I possibly can. And you're going to be coming into the next season. You're going to be coming into the next season, and congratulations. Hopefully you have overwintered your nuke successfully by that point. You're coming into the next season to where this nuke is going to be again expanding. When are you going to want to raise, split that colony? So you've overwintered that nuke. It is growing. It is expanding. When do you want to try to build into a new colony, right? That's kind of the last part of this equation here. Well, there's a couple of different ways that you could do that. You could, if you want to buy a queen, you're going to want to wait until queens are being raised in your area. So contact whoever you want to buy from and see when they think that first one is going to be. A general rule of thumb among people who are raising queens is that whenever you see the dandelions coming up and blooming, that's about whenever you want to start raising queens. Okay, so that's about when they're starting that process. They're not going to be for sale at that point because a lot of times people who raise queens are also selling nukes, so a lot of their first rounds of queens are going to their own nucleus colonies. So you're definitely going to want to contact them. If you are doing it on your own, where you are just splitting it out and you're using the swarm cells, you definitely want to see plenty of drones flying in the air, so that whenever that queen goes and mates, then you know, okay, my colony is producing drones, these drones are flying, therefore I'm now ready to go ahead and to split. So usually you're looking at somewhere around March to April, whenever you're ready to begin that whole process, and then you're going to start over and you're going to treat this new colony that you just split off, you're going to treat it just like the nuke, and you're going to start all over again. But I hope that process goes well for you, and I hope that breaking it down in that way was very, very helpful. And I'm going to give you one last little tip here whenever it comes to your nuke before we close this video out. this is something that you might want to consider doing. I have purchased nukes several times. You very well might want to do a mite test on that nuke. You very well might want to do a mite test, because sometimes nukes come and they have very low mite load. Sometimes they come and they need a mite treatment. It just happens. It just happens where they need a mite treatment, and while they are at that young stage of development, you could hit them with around 1 round of oxalic acid, maybe 2 or 3. It depends on what is needed. You can determine that, but you can hit them with oxalic acid and get that under control early on. That is something that some people will want to do, some people will not want to do, again, just depending on the beekeeper. But I can tell you personally, I have done that, and I have found colonies that needed to be treated. And so it's a good time to get that done before they start expanding real big, especially with a treatment like oxalic acid that is very, very gentle and very, very easy on the bees. So be sure and check the health of that colony whenever you get it. Does it have royal mites? Does it have good pollen? Does it have a good amount of nectar? Check those things and respond accordingly. I hope that this was helpful for you. It's an exciting thing to be getting your first nucleus colony. So let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you have any comments down below. I would love to help in any way that I can, give you information for sure. I actually have a few nucleus colonies that I'm still selling as well, so if you need something in that department, definitely feel free to reach out and contact me. Also, thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. I wish you the best in your beekeeping journey. God bless. We'll see you in the next one.